Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight, dieting, and constantly feeling like you're starting over with nutrition and fitness? Do you wish you had more energy? Do you want to lose weight and finally keep it off for good? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse. I too have been there, and at the age of 44, I decided I was done with fad diets and chasing a lower number on the scale. I was so tired of constantly starting over and wondering why I couldn't get lasting results. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best formula for women who want to build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, the scale, and your body, let's build your formula for feeling your best. If you're new here, make sure to check the episode details for the link to my newbie starter guide. You'll receive an email straight to your inbox with everything you need to start building your Feel Your Best formula. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's dive into today's episode. Okay, yes, you read that right. Here we are at episode 30, and I had a little fun with the title, You in the Scale, a Love Story, because honestly, I want you to fall in love with the scale. I thought I was being funny, so I hope you appreciated it, but last week's episode was all about your relationship with food, and honestly, if we're going to have a realistic discussion on what it takes to get to a fat loss phase and do it in a way that is beneficial for your physical and mental health, then we really need to talk about the scale as well. So you in the scale, what do you think about? What emotions come to mind when you think about getting on the scale? Just like our relationship with food, our relationship with the scale is influenced by factors from our formative years. And like I talked about on last week's episode, it could be so many of those same things that I talked about in that episode. So if you didn't listen, you can go listen to that one. I'm not going to repeat myself. I mean, I think we all know that we're exposed to, that we see all kinds of imagery as a child, in our homes and in the media and at school and friends and everything. So it could really be standing in your way of having a long-term healthy lifestyle and a body weight that you feel good about if you're putting all this emphasis on the scale. And I'm really hoping this episode kind of shows you that you're probably putting a lot of value on the scale and a lot of power on the scale and the scale's, ability to make you feel a certain way. And it's completely needless. So I know so many women struggle, and some men too. Men, of course, I don't want to be exclusive here, but mostly women really struggle with the number on the scale and getting emotional about it. Honestly, if you just scroll through Facebook or Instagram, how many times does a meme pop up joking about the scale, getting on the scale, especially this time of year as we're thinking about summer, and some sort of joke alluding to the fact that we hate the scale. And I mean, it's funny, but it's also kind of not funny because there's no reason that we should allow the scale to dictate so much of our self-worth. And at the end of the day, it really is just a tool. And I hope by the end of this episode, you can think about maybe getting excited to get on the scale and using it to help you move forward towards your goals. I want you to make friends with the scale, start your own love story, and embrace how it can help you love your journey towards understanding yourself and building your formula for feeling your best. That's why we're here. Okay, so first, can we just talk about what a scale actually is and what it does? Basically, when you step on the scale, it's just simply measuring the force your body is exerting on the scale due to gravity pulling you down. So we measure that in pounds here in the United States. You might measure that in kilograms where you are, and kilograms is slightly different because it's all about mass, but in terms of your relationship with the scale, you probably use it the same way. interchangeably your opinion of that number on the scale and how it, affects your relationship with it. So that's all it is. It's just a tool, just like you weigh your bag of apples at the grocery store, weighing your body. It's just this mechanism of measuring the force of gravity. So we let that number, unfortunately, dictate so many of our thoughts and our feelings and behaviors. I kind of am going to go a different route here than maybe a lot of, nutrition coaches or weight loss coaches go, because I do come from a different background and perspective. So I just want to start off by sort of sharing this perspective with you, because I was thinking about weight and how it's something that is a data point that is measured literally from the time you are a fetus. So if you're new here, I'm a former high-risk labor and delivery nurse, antepartum nurse. So if you ever had preterm labor, placenta previa, placenta accreta, early rupture of membranes, these are all those common things that happen during pregnancy that can be very scary and can lead to really poor outcomes if not treated properly. And a big thing that is done to monitor the health of mom and baby in similar situations is looking at the growth of the fetus and making sure that the placenta is nourishing the baby properly. And what they're doing is measuring the bones on the baby to get an estimate of what the baby weighs. And just even normal ultrasounds, when you go in, they're checking to make sure that the baby is growing and estimating what that weight is. So if a baby is a lot smaller or a lot larger than average, it can indicate that something is wrong and needs to be addressed. If a baby is very, very small, it can be a sign that the placenta is not nourishing the baby correctly and something might need to be done. The baby might do better off outside of the mother's body. And you have to make decisions, and estimating the baby's weight is a data point that these highly skilled physicians are looking at to help them make the best decision. And then when your baby is born, you take your baby to the pediatrician, or you go back to your labor and delivery unit where the baby was born within 24, 48 hours, especially if you're breastfeeding, and they want to make sure that that baby is growing and has not lost too much weight. They want to make sure the baby is at least back at similar weight to when the baby was born, and they're using weight as a measure of health, wellness, whether or not the baby is thriving and being nourished. So do you see where I'm going here? Weight, size, and nourishment are all things that are connected from the moment you are conceived, and it can be an indicator or a data point to measure overall health and wellness. So can we agree that this is an incredibly important data point to measure for babies and children? It continues, we plot that baby's height and weight as they become a child and look to make sure that they are growing and everything is developing normally. And if we didn't closely measure that weight, we most certainly would miss certain warning signs that could be a harmful health outcome. Maybe there's some sort of digestive disorder, or something is going on with the baby where they're not able to absorb nutrients due to a chromosomal disorder. There are so many ways that measuring weight can indicate whether or not things are going well and an individual is healthy. And do we place any moral value on the baby who is extra small or the baby who is extra large? Because having an extra large baby can indicate different problems as well. So being outside of the normal range is something that you need to look at. But somehow we have this cutoff on this data where, yes, there is this time, babies, children, understanding their weight, we all agree, yes, this is helpful and important in making healthcare decisions. But then for some reason, when you become an adult, it becomes this messy, complicated thing where people just suddenly want to say weight doesn't matter. And I personally believe, and I know that some people will absolutely disagree with me, but I feel that it is very clear that weight can be used as a helpful data point when it comes to assessing and formulating a plan for overall health. People get all up in arms and pissed off when you talk about BMI. But the way I view it is BMI is simply one point of data combined with other factors to give you a picture of your overall health status. If you have a super high BMI greater than 30, which is the cutoff where it's indicating obesity, you also want to look at your activity level, your fitness level, the quality of the foods you're eating, and really important to look at your blood work because there's no single data point that tells the whole story. And we need to be moving away from this completely useless conversation where people are just getting angry over weight, BMI, and saying that none of it matters. And the truth is, it's a multifactorial process that your body goes through to determine its level of health and wellness. And people getting upset saying that we shouldn't use these data points are probably missing out on early warning indicators of things that might indicate long-term health problems that may say, you know what, maybe we need to look at these things further. So like I said, there's no single data point that tells the whole story. And if one single data point, like the number on the scale, has power over your emotional well-being or is holding you back from getting more data that can help you move towards a healthier lifestyle, then you really need to think about it. And I hope that the rest of this podcast, where I'm going to go over how we can start to develop a better relationship with the scale, I hope that you find it helpful because we really have to talk about the nuances in these conversations. And I think it's really frustrating just seeing all these people screaming extremely different opinions all out in the world when the truth is you are a unique individual with a experience in your body, experience in your life that is not the same as literally any other person's. And you have to be willing to take responsibility to look at the things in your life that you can control and take responsibility for, which is different for me than it is for you, than it is for your neighbor, than it is for someone who lives in the next town, who lives in another country. These are all things that have to be looked at in a nuanced and individualized way. And I truly believe that having a healthy relationship with the scale is one way that you can really move forward and start taking action towards an overall healthier lifestyle. So let's take a look at the scale and how we can use it and how we can start having a better relationship with it. So number one, let's make sure you understand exactly what the scale is measuring, because I know you think it measures one thing and one thing only. And while you're aware that, it measures more than this one thing, you still have a really hard time remembering that when you step on the scale. You think the scale is measuring how fat you are. And I hate to talk like that because I feel like it's a little bit aggressive, but I also feel like this is how people talk. Like, you either feel fat, you feel skinny, you feel overweight, whatever. However you want to say it, you feel like you step on the scale and that's what it's telling you. And it's a reflection of how fat you are or how skinny you are. And honestly, it's you automatically feeling like if it's up, that's a bad thing. And there's a lot to unpack here, but I think you know what I'm saying. It's messed up. The truth is, the scale is measuring so many things. When you step on the scale, it's measuring all your body parts, your bones, your blood volume, your internal organs. It's measuring the food that you ate that is sitting in your digestive system. It's measuring the water all throughout your body, inside and outside of your cells. And there can be a huge fluctuation in all of these things. Well, not your bones, but there can be fluctuations in these aspects of what is making up that number on the scale. And yes, fat is part of it, muscle is part of it, but that number on the scale is not 100% just body fat. Okay, so number 2, how often do you get on the scale? Is it something that's an actual habit for you? Is it something you avoid? Is it something you only do when you're, quote, being good and on a diet? Or is it something that you do it daily? You do it weekly? There's so many ways that you could approach when you want to get on the scale. My recommendation and what I ask my clients to do in a fat loss phase and leading up to a fat loss phase is just start weighing yourself daily. It's definitely something I customize for my clients because of the reason that we're having this podcast today, because everyone has this like disordered relationship with the scale, which I personally had as well. And it's something that I've completely gotten over. And my hope is for you to do the same. But weighing yourself daily can be so beneficial. And we'll talk more about that as we move on. So next, do you actually track your weight and write it down or use an app? Or do you just kind of like glance at it and run away from it? And you just think, oh, it'll be lower next time. I can't even think about this. I definitely recommend the app called Happy Scale. This app is a game changer because it shows you the data that matters. Because first of all, weighing yourself daily at the same time of day is going to create a consistent habit that's going to give you more data points to pull from versus just weighing yourself once a week or once a month or something like that. The more data points that you have, the more accurate that is going to be in whatever your goals are, whether you're maintaining, whether you're looking to gain, whether you're looking to lose. And as you weigh yourself daily, you're going to see these fluctuations. The scale could go up 2, 3, 4 pounds overnight, and the scale could go down 2, 3, 4 pounds overnight, or it could stay the exact same, sometimes for days on end. But if you're only weighing yourself once a week and you're missing all these different data points and you're just happen to be catching yourself on a day when the scale is up or a day when the scale is down, you're not really seeing what's going on in your body. Weighing yourself daily helps to normalize those fluctuations in your mind. And it's also just giving you more data points so that you can see the trends. And that's why I love the Happy Scale app, because it's going to tell you what your moving weekly average is as far as your overall weight. And then it's also going to tell you if you're trending in weight loss, trending in weight gain, or maintaining. So having more data just really paints a much more accurate picture than randomly jumping on the scale once a week. And you can also really play games with yourself. If you're jumping on the scale once a week, you can stuff your face Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then you know you're getting on the scale on Friday. Starve yourself Thursday, Friday. Jump off the scale after you weigh yourself Friday. Eat your face off. You know, it can be this like really unhealthy way of approaching the scale, because the scale is just holding you accountable. The scale doesn't care what that number is when you get on it, but in a way it's holding you accountable. It's all about that self-accountability. And again, I have a whole podcast episode on self-accountability. But even if you ate the exact same foods every single day, the scale would still fluctuate because it's measuring all these different things. And sometimes you're going to be more bloated, or maybe you have slightly more salt one day, and that's going to make you retain water, or your hormones are, or maybe your digestion's moving a little slower and you just have a little bit more poop left in your system. Like, honestly, if you start weighing yourself every single day, that is so helpful to let go of that automatic feeling of the scale is telling me I'm fat, or the scale is telling me I'm skinny. I think a lot of us can get caught up too in certain numbers. I know it's always a big deal when someone's like, oh, I went from 200 pounds to 199 pounds, or I went from 190 pounds to 189 pounds. And for some reason, those particular data points just hold all this emotional power, when the truth is you're no different of a person at 200 pounds than you were at 199 pounds, except you might have, slightly less weight on you. What matters the most is the overall trend over time and the direction that you're going over time. Okay. And also, I just want to add that even when I was in maintenance, I still weighed myself every day. So normalizing that habit of getting on the scale during times when you're not even, quote, on a diet or trying to lose weight, that's a really great time to build that relationship with the scale. And that is something I really encourage with my clients as well. Okay, next, we need to remember that a pound of fat is 3,500 calories. So if you're so obsessed with fat and thinking that the scale is telling you how fat or skinny you are, ask yourself if on those days that you gain or lose 2 to 3 pounds, which totally happens all the time, did you really eat 7,000 or 11,000 calories more that day? I highly doubt it, unless you somehow have an enormous stomach and are able to consume that much food. It's just water weight, it's just the food in your system, whatever. You did not gain or lose 2 to 3 pounds of fat overnight. Weighing yourself in the morning before you pee and poop is a really great way to prove this to yourself. Weigh yourself before you pee and poop, weigh yourself after, and you'll probably lose a couple pounds right there. So you can just see it doesn't matter that much. Those big fluctuations are not fat. Okay. This one is really important, and I hope the way I describe it makes sense, but don't weigh yourself in a data vacuum. So what I'm saying is, if the only thing you're tracking is your weight and you're not tracking or getting any other data, then yeah, there is just really not much point to that. Tracking your food, and when I say tracking your food, I always want you to remember that this is not something that I would recommend doing for the rest of your life. I recommend doing it so that you can learn how to nourish your body and what that looks like. And you need to do it during a fat loss phase, but the goal is to graduate, if you will, to just eating intuitively. And I've been there, and it was amazing. And you learn how to maintain your weight because of everything that you learned while you were tracking. And it just becomes second nature, and it just becomes your habit, the way that you make food choices. So when I say tracking your food, don't think that this is going to be something you're doing for literally the rest of your life. But during this learning phase, you really should be tracking your food. I don't think you can really expect to build a better relationship with the scale if you're not understanding the relationship of the scale with your other habits. So tracking your food and tracking your calories, that's part of tracking your food, using a food scale to make sure you're being accurate with that food tracking your sleep, your activity level, your strength gains in the gym, and really tracking these overall habits so you can start to see the fluctuation between your habits and the scale. When you're blindly following a diet and you don't really understand like all these connection points, then yeah, you're going to be frustrated and you're not really going to understand the information the scale is giving you, or start to feel a locus of control when it comes to your emotions and the scale. I'm personally a big fan of only focusing on what matters, and it's also important not to neglect the things that do matter while you're trying to reach your goals. So do not track your weight just in a vacuum. Make sure that you are tracking other data that matters. Number 6, there's a big difference between weight loss and fat loss. Weight loss is just that, loss of weight, the scale going down. And if you're drastically restricting calories, dieting, losing muscle, losing water weight, you're going to have less food in your digestive tract. There's less glycogen being stored in your muscles. Yeah, you're going to lose weight. But if you're not actively taking steps to maintain muscle, you're going to lose your beneficial muscle mass along with the fat. And the fat is just going to be a piece of that weight loss, seeing the scale go down. But the old you is probably super excited to see the scale go down because you're thinking that it's only fat. You're not thinking that it's simply just weight loss. And true fat loss is done in an intentional way where you're preserving that beneficial lean body mass, your muscle, and you're doing your best to focus on just losing fat, which is going to be really slow compared to that generalized weight loss where you're losing the water weight, the muscle weight, all the things. But the diet industry has you thinking that overall weight loss is fat loss, and that is just not true. Okay, next, let's remember that muscle is dense. It takes up less space than fat, but it does weigh something. So as you grow your muscles, you have to expect that the weight of your lean muscle mass is going to increase, and your goal body, which you want to have more muscle on than you probably do right now, probably weighs a lot more than you think. As I shared on my Instagram stories, I've gained about 15 pounds since I started focusing on building muscle almost 2 years ago. And certainly not all that weight is muscle. I'm well aware of that, but I'm eating more food. I'm gaining muscle. It's very clear that I'm getting so much stronger. I'm lifting heavier and heavier during my workouts. And I let my body heal from being in that constant all in, all out diet mode that I had been in for years. And gaining this weight and allowing myself to live in this space of maintenance has truly been the best thing that I have ever done for myself. And a big part of that was letting go of how I thought that number on the scale reflected who I was as a person. And this has truly just been the most healing thing I've ever done for my body or my mental health. And once I really felt ready, I finally entered a fat loss phase, and doing it right, wow, the fat is coming off, but it's so much slower than when you just take a generalized weight loss approach. But the best part is seeing that the muscle that I've spent all this time building is now being revealed by taking off just that fat. And I've never been more proud of my arms. I've always remember being told as a kid that, women can't get strong arms. And I glanced in the mirror as I was walking by wearing a tank top the other day, and I was like, oh my gosh, are those my arms? And I would never be seeing these results if I had thought that reaching a certain number on the scale was bad for me. And I had stopped because I was scared of the scale going up. So if I'd freaked out, I would not be feeling the pride that I feel now and be so excited to continue on towards my goal. I'm actually almost 30 pounds heavier than I was at my lightest. About 8 or maybe 9 years ago now, I did a particular program and really cut my calories and really got very obsessive over things, and I got down to a weight that I hadn't seen since high school. And I thought it was great at the time, but I obviously could not maintain it because it was so difficult for my body to eat the small amount of food that it needed to maintain that weight. And it was so unhealthy for me physically and mentally. But then for some reason, that weight continued to be my goal weight for years and years. It was always, oh, I have to get back to there. I have to get back to there. And it wasn't until I finally realized I never want to go back to there. I got there by eating probably 1,400 calories per day, and I'm 5'5". So yeah, I should not ever be eating that low amount of food and obsessing over working out. I definitely did not build any muscle or gain any strength during that process. So I don't ever want to go back there. I know better, and I'm going to do better. It was not a good space for me physically or mentally, but somehow that low number on the scale seemed just so exciting and such an accomplishment. So if you have that same really low number, honestly, you're going to have to rethink that on your new journey, especially if you work with me. Then I'm going to tell you right off the bat, whatever you think that number is, that is your goal weight. Okay, you can think that that's what it is, but as we go on this journey together and you build muscle and you build this healthier relationship with food, maybe your goal weight should be your happiest weight, where you're healthy, it's easy to maintain, you don't have to overthink it. To me, that is the ultimate goal. And you have to be willing to put in the work physically and mentally. And the physical work can literally take years because you've got to build that muscle. And building muscle takes time, especially for us women, especially if you're like me and over 40. You have to be really intentional about it, but it doesn't have to be complicated. And there's a lot of people out there trying to complicate all of this, especially for women over 40. So if you're going to keep chasing weight loss and think that weight loss is where you're finally going to find your happiness, and it's only that number on the scale that's going to make you happy, and you're neglecting all these other areas like building muscle and getting sleep and managing your stress and things like that, you're just going to keep chasing your tail. And honestly, you're probably never going to get there, and you're just going to throw your hands in the air and feel like it's never possible to be happy in your body. Okay, so listen, we could go on, but these are things that I really hope can start to stimulate some different thoughts when it comes to the scale. You really can't be mad about the number on the scale if you aren't looking at all these other areas of your habits. And I personally believe that getting on the scale daily, tracking your food, tracking your habits, and that impact is that the scale, you're going to let go of that dysfunctional relationship with scale. You can learn to love it. But if you're going to just eat like a trash can, as that's like what one of my close friends says, she says, eating like a trash can, when, we all have those moments where we have one of those days where we just eat everything in sight. And she says, I'm eating like a trash can. So if you're going to eat like a trash can, you're going to be drinking alcohol regularly, not making sure that you're going to bed early enough to get a good night's sleep. If you're just going to allow yourself to have really crappy habits overall, and you aren't paying attention to how all those choices are adding up and resulting into that outcome, then you're probably going to have a hard time loving the scale, because you're just seeing that number on the scale. You're not seeing all the other things that go into what that number is actually trying to tell you. Having a good relationship with food, the scale, your body, and your habits starts with being willing to learn. And if you aren't willing to put the time and effort into this learning phase, then you're going to have a really, really, really hard time building habits and results that stick. When I work with my clients, the very first thing we do is enter this learning phase. And I know it's kind of disappointing. It's kind of frustrating. Like, when we make that decision, like, oh, I'm going to make change, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to start being healthy, we automatically want to associate that with losing weight, getting to a certain number on the scale. And I'm telling you, if you skip over this learning phase, you are never going to get there. If you want to learn more about my method and could use some extra guidance, support, and accountability, I've opened up 3 more one-to-one coaching spots, and all you need to do is book a 15-minute call with me where we can chat. I can give you an overview of how everything works, and we can just see if this is the right next step for you, if this is something you're willing to invest the time, the energy, and the money into. It could literally change your life. My current one-to-one clients are just absolutely thriving, and they are loving the process that we're going through together where we go through this learning phase. I have a couple clients that are in a fat loss phase, and they're amazed at how easier it is than anything they've done before because they've done the mental work to get there. Okay, so you can always find a link to book a 15-minute session with me below in the show details. You can find more information in the show notes, and I will see you back here on Friday morning for this week's mini session. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check the episode details for my new listener starter guide, and any additional resources mentioned in the episode can also be found in the show notes on my website. You can always find me on Instagram at Macros with Lil, and for more healthy lifestyle tips, recipes, and information on my one-to-one and group coaching services, make sure to check out my website. All the links can be found below. If you know someone else who is ready to start building their formula for feeling their best, please share the love and send them a link to the podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful, and I'll see you back here next week for a brand new one.